back, guys. I am back with another one, and today we are going to get into this article. Yeah, it's actually the same day. I had to split this video into two because it would have been just too long, and I wanted you guys to read over this article so that we could read it together, and I wanted your eyes to see the words in print and get your reaction. I can't see your reaction, but you would probably be surprised as I was. But like I said, that is happening so soon, but really not so soon, because we see from the things that's taking place in this world, we know that time is drawing to a close, and we have to get serious. For those of us that's looking for a better world to come, to be with Jesus, to have all this stuff put to an end, the agitations, the persecutions, the unlawful things that we encounter on a day-to-day basis, the injustices. I know that you are tired, I am tired, and you want to finally just exhale and ready for all of this to just come to an end. But before we get there, we are going to have to go through some trying times, and those trying times are upon us. As I stated before, our neighbors to the north of us, Canada, is passing legislation to label the Bible as hate speech. So let's get into this article.
My friends, let's get into this article. The Bible as hate speech. Gays win big in Canada. Americans have historically been pleased to have Canada as our northern neighbor. The border between the United States and Canada is often described as the world's most largest and most peaceful, and visiting Americans find most of Canada pretty much like home, with just enough quaint differences to make a visit interesting. All that is about to change, and some Americans are about ready to dig a moral moat alongside the border. Our basically peaceful northern neighbor has experienced a huge personality change, and not for the better. Liberal Canada is turning itself into radical Sweden. On Tuesday, the Canadian House of Commons defeated a motion defining marriage as the union of one man and one woman to the exclusion of all others. The margin of victory was small, but the bill failed just the same, and the media quickly claimed the vote as an endorsement of homosexual marriage. And provincial appeals court in Ontario legalized gay marriage this past summer, ruling that denying homosexual couples the right to marry violated the dignity of same-sex relationships. Hundreds of homosexual couples quickly took advantage of the ruling, and Prime Minister Jean Chrétien chose not to appeal the court's ruling. The bill proposed by the Canadian Alliance Party was the only hope of reversing the decision and prohibiting gay marriage. The bill's demise means that homosexual marriage will almost surely be legalized throughout the nation. Cardinal Jean-Claude Turcotte, not sure if I'm pronouncing that last name right, Archbishop of Montreal, condemned Parliament's action. If marriage simply become a union of two persons who love each other, must we then permit marriage between a brother and sister, between a father and his daughter, between a mother and her son? Conservative Protestants also sounded the alarm. The Evangelical Fellowship of Canada released a statement expressing disappointment in the vote and promising a vigorous debate on the issue in coming months. It may be too late. Janie Epp Buckingham, the group's director of law and public policy, claimed that millions of Canadians oppose the redefinition of marriage, and President Bruce Clemenger asserted that the marriage issue is really not about rights at all, but about legal definition and public policy. If marriage is reduced to merely a contract between two people, its distinctiveness will be lost, and it will be hard for the government to refuse including other types of relationships. I can just see it now. I really love my dog Fido, and I want to marry him. Tuesday's action in Parliament was bad enough, but the very next day the House of Commons moved to include homosexuals under hate crime provisions. Bill C-250 was sponsored by homosexual MP Sven Robinson, who told the media that his bill would recognize that just as we say it's wrong to promote hatred or violence directed against racial or religious or ethnic minorities, so too should we say it's just as wrong to promote the hatred or violence directed at gay or lesbian people. See, they call the word of God hatred. They just don't understand. The devil has blinded their eyes. Others see the bill very differently, as an attempt to silence Christians by criminalizing anyone who quotes the Bible's passages against homosexuality. Brian Rushfelt of the Canada Family Action Coalition explains that Canadians opposed to homosexual marriage are already being accused of hate speech by homosexual activists. When C-250 is passed into law later this fall, the activists will begin to insist on prosecution to silence their critics with criminal sanctions. The bill now moves to the Senate and must eventually receive royal assent to become law. Both sides now expect the bill to become law by the end of the year. This is just like Acts chapter 7 with the stoning of Stephen. As Stephen preached and retraced the history of Israel and their errors in crucifying the Son of God, those people yelled out and stopped their ears and pulled Stephen outside the city and stoned him to death. Well, people, I don't know what to say, but this is an unfortunate turn of events, but we know we must come to this impasse because this world is drawing to a close. Let's get back to the article. Celebrating his legislative victory, MP Robinson declared, "I feel proud to be a Canadian." He has every reason to cheer, for the gay and lesbian agenda took unprecedented strides forward in the past week. He appears to be on the winning side. All this may take their American neighbors by surprise. Not me. Many Americans are unaware of the fact that Canada's public life is radically secular when compared to the United States. Canada is pioneering a post-Christian culture with liberal sexual mores and a hostility to Christian conviction. In 1997, a Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission Board of Inquiry fined a Christian businessman $4,500 for running an advertisement in the Star Phoenix newspaper that simply listed 4 biblical passages that condemned homosexual behavior: Leviticus 18:22 and 20:13, Romans 1:26, and 1 Corinthians 6:9, the same text which Israel Folau was quoting. The ad did not even provide the actual text of the verses. 2 stick men holding hands were pictured in the advertisement, with the international negative symbol, a red circle bisected by a slash, over the figures. The board ruled that the symbols, when combined with the biblical citations, would expose or tend to expose homosexuals to hatred or ridicule. According to this Canadian agency, the Bible is now hate speech. You see that? To expose. People do not want to be exposed. They want to be left alone in their sins. And it's not just homosexuality. As you read 1 Corinthians 6:9, there's a list of unrighteousness that's listed in that text. But they're zeroing in on homosexuality because these people have moved into prominent positions in government Just like the arresting officer of Pastor David Lynn, he was a homosexual. They said his speech was disrupting the place. He was disturbing the peace because people were convicted of their sins. Canada's Christians have plenty of reason to worry. Sweden has moved to make all anti-homosexual speech a criminal offense, including sermons or Bible readings that condemn homosexual behavior. Pastors can be fined and cited for unacceptable sermons. Canada's legal system is moving quickly in the same direction and with the same arguments. The whole idea of hate speech has a dubious basis in the law. Hate crime legislations set certain groups apart as deserving of special protections. Christians do not defend physical violence against anyone, homosexuals included, and call for the full prosecution of anyone who would resort to violence or assault. But to label certain forms of assault hate crimes assumes that the motivation to harm one person is more criminal than the motivation to harm another. When hate crimes are extended to speech, the government sets itself up as a judge of what language or speech is legal or illegal. The logic of the legislation is clear. No criticism of homosexuality is allowable, whatever its form or basis. This would cover not only epithets thrown at homosexuals, but sermons in Christian pulpits against homosexual behavior. The move to silence the pulpit represents the ultimate aim of homosexual activists. In the end, the biblical condemnation of homosexual behavior is the great obstacle to the normalization of homosexuality in all other sexual lifestyles. So long as a significant portion of the population claims allegiance to the Bible, gay activists face an insurmountable obstacle to full acceptance of their sexuality. If the pulpits can be silenced, and if the Bible can be set aside as a dangerous, hate-filled text, the path to full acceptance and normalization is wide open. Preaching and teaching against homosexuality simply cannot be allowed. Many fear that the Canadian legislation would make biblical preaching a crime. Americans will watch our northern neighbor with increasing wariness and concern. Homosexual activists here would like to see similar legislation passed in the United States. In the meantime, Canadian Christians had better wake up. The Word of God is about to be labeled as hate speech, and telling the truth is about to become a crime. As I stated before in my opening, in an age of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and this is where we are in the world today. Those of us who hold a biblical worldview and stand with God and His Word are now labeled as criminals as we quote those scriptures. Well, people, the spiritual war is strengthening. We better wake up and recognize what time it is and stay faithful and remain true to God, because time is winding up. And I will see you next time, friends. Until then, stay faithful, stay in prayer, and keep those who are under direct persecution like Pastor David Lynn and Israel Folau and many others that are suffering physical abuse for trying to follow the Word of God. Let's keep those uplifted in prayer. And I'm out.
I wanted to thank you for subscribing, for those of you who did. I want to thank you for bearing with me as we read that article. I know it was kind of long, but it was good information. And, we have to share this message with others. We have to start standing up, because if nobody begin to stand up and begin to speak out more and more and more, we will be like China, Iran, and Pakistan. We will be locked up for the Word of God. And we will be like those people, the founding fathers and those pilgrims and those people that were escaping from the old world, who are looking for a place to worship God to the dictates of their conscience without, being persecuted, without the Inquisition. So we have to do our part. We have to do our due diligence to stay up on top of these laws, and to find out who these people are in government. We have to ring those phones. We have to inform people of what's taking place in this world. I'm telling you, this place without true Christian character in certain positions, it's literally going to be a nightmare. Now, I know there are some people out there that give Christians a bad name because they preach hate. And you will never reach nobody without the love of God in your heart. Now, I agree with those people of the alternative lifestyle. It is a turnoff, and you just make those people more adamant in their sins. It don't matter if it's homosexuality or whatever it is they're engaging in that's unrighteous. Without the love of God in your heart, you're not going to reach anybody. You need to take the example of Jesus. Now, you think about how he engaged people on a day-to-day basis in the Bible. He was not saying certain epithets towards these people. He always taught, in a loving manner. So this is the steps that we have to take, because I've seen it with my own eyes and witnessed people in the church that said, some derogatory or just had a negative disposition towards certain groups of people, and it was just very unchristlike, and they will never win souls that way. Remember, the big picture is to win souls, because a lot of people are deceived and they don't know any better. A lot of people was not raised in the church. Remember, this generation is coming up is entirely different from our generation and the generation before mine, where it was common to be in church. Like my mother's generation, it was common for everybody to be in church on Sunday, or to raise your children with the word of God. But now, since evolution and everything's are being mandated and Christianity is not being allowed to be taught in the schools, this is why the world is the way it is. But I'm not going to be too much more long-winded. This video is already at 15 minutes, so I'm pretty sure I gave you all the necessary information. We just have to stay engaged, stay focused, you guys, and stay true to the Lord. And that's how I'm going to end it. And I'll see you on the next one.